Rangers trekking through a remote forest zone on a routine wildlife check found themselves halted by an eerie, unsettling scene. Nestled between dense pine trees was an abandoned campsite, but not just deserted. It looked like it had been left in a panic. The campfire had long gone cold, its ashes blown thin by the wind. 2 tents stood crooked and torn, their poles bent as if crushed under pressure or clawed open. Cans of food lay scattered, some unopened, others gnawed. A child's toy truck sat half buried in the dirt, its bright red color stark against the earthy ground. The area was silent, unnaturally so. No laughter, no footsteps, no human voices. Just a low drone of insects circling the scene. One of the rangers, a seasoned tracker named Cole, crouched beside a boot print, noting how it pointed toward the woods, but no return tracks followed. As the team carefully stepped toward the largest tent, a flap fluttered open with a gust of wind. Inside, what they saw made them freeze. Nestled against a wooden crib sat a tiny, frail puppy, its eyes locked onto theirs, body tense. The crib was empty, yet the pup stayed beside it, unmoving, guarding it with all the seriousness of a trained sentinel. No bark, no growl, just an unwavering stare. Something was deeply wrong here. This was no ordinary abandoned camp. Inside the largest and most intact tent, the air was stale and heavy. The fabric flapped gently in the breeze, casting shifting shadows across the interior. And there, tucked in the far corner, was a wooden crib, small, hand-painted, its white edges now dulled by dust and time. But it wasn't the crib that made the ranger's breath hitch. It was what sat beside it. A tiny puppy, barely old enough to be weaned, crouched close to the crib's leg. Its fur was a mess of dirt and tangled patches, matted from days, maybe weeks, without care. Every bone in its body showed through its fragile frame, yet there was something sharp in its eyes. Fierce, defiant. It didn't run. It didn't cower. As one of the rangers stepped closer, the pup let out a low, trembling growl, lips barely lifting, but eyes warning them not to take another step. There was no food in the tent, no water, nothing of value to guard. The crib was empty, the blanket folded neatly as if waiting for someone who never returned. No footprints in or out, no blood, just silence, and the dog, rooted like a soldier at his post. It didn't take long to understand. This wasn't a stray looking for warmth. This was a guardian, holding its position with desperate, unwavering loyalty, not to survive, but to protect whatever memory still lingered in that silent, hollow crib. The rangers spread out cautiously, their boots crunching softly over dead leaves and broken twigs. The deeper they examined the area, the stranger things became. Just beyond the edge of the tents, deep claw marks gouged the bark of several trees, long, ragged slashes that hadn't come from a knife or tool. They looked fresh enough to suggest something had passed through recently, something large and agitated. Nearby, deep imprints in the soft soil circled the perimeter of the camp. Massive, uneven footprints, not quite human, not quite animal. No clear pattern, but enough to suggest pacing or stalking. It looked like a wild animal attack, possibly a bear or maybe wolves. But something wasn't right. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood spatters, no torn clothing or scattered remains. Not a single indication of fight or frantic escape, just abandoned belongings, a broken lantern, and food left to spoil in the open. The more they saw, the more disturbing the silence became. It was as if time had paused, as if whoever had been here had simply vanished into thin air. And yet, amid all the confusion and creeping dread, the image that haunted the rangers most was that of the lone puppy, still sitting beside the crib, frail, filthy, and trembling, but unmoved. It hadn't chased after the danger or run for safety. It stayed, guarding something that wasn't even there anymore, a protector with no orders and no one left to protect. One of the rangers, a soft-spoken man named Reyes, moved slowly toward the crib, hands raised in a gesture of peace. The puppy didn't growl this time, just watched him with tired, guarded eyes. Its little body trembled from exhaustion, but it stayed pressed close to the wooden leg of the crib, refusing to give up its post. Reyes knelt carefully, his voice a whisper in the heavy silence. "It's okay, buddy. I'm not here to hurt you. With delicate fingers, Reyes reached into the crib and pulled out a small, torn blanket, faded yellow with a stitched pattern of stars. The edges were frayed, and in the corner, just barely visible through the dirt and time, was a name stitched in soft blue thread. Eli. The moment he spoke the name aloud, the puppy gave a soft, broken whimper, the sound of something that had been waiting far too long. Then, as if drained of all remaining energy, it laid its head gently on the edge of the crib and closed its eyes, not to sleep, but to remember. It had not left that spot in days, maybe longer. Through rain, cold nights, and whatever terror had unfolded here, it had stayed, starving, alone, but unwavering. And now, with the name finally spoken aloud, it seemed to break a silence that had suffocated the camp. The Rangers exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from confusion to something far deeper, heartbreak. Whatever had happened here, this tiny creature had refused to abandon hope. It was waiting for Eli. Back at the ranger station, the team sat in silence, the image of the lonely puppy still fresh in their minds. Reyes placed the torn baby blanket on the table with quiet care. The name Eli, stitched into the corner, was their only lead, their only clue to what had happened in that ghostly camp. They powered up the computer and accessed the National Missing Persons database. Reyes typed in Eli, alongside filters for the past month and nearby regions. Within moments, a case file surfaced, and the room went still. A young couple, Jeremy and Mara Collins, and their 14-month-old son, Eli, had been reported missing 2 weeks ago after failing to return from a weekend camping trip. The location they'd been headed to matched the region the Rangers had just searched. The report stated they were last seen purchasing supplies in a nearby town before heading into the wilderness. The night they disappeared, a massive storm had struck, flooding roads, triggering landslides, and cutting off search efforts. Helicopters had scoured the area for days, but found nothing. The case was close to being labeled a cold file. The assumption had been grim, either lost to the elements or claimed by wildlife. But no one had expected this. No one had imagined a single puppy would stay behind, guarding a crib and a blanket, refusing to let Eli's story be forgotten. Now, with this new lead, the Rangers knew they had to go back, because someone might still be out there waiting. The next morning, with the sun casting long shadows through the trees, the Rangers returned to the campsite. This time, they came not to search randomly, but to follow the one soul who had never stopped searching, Eli's puppy. After offering food and a bowl of water, the tiny dog ate cautiously, eyes never leaving the crib. When it finished, it stood, stretched its trembling legs, and turned toward the trees without hesitation. The Rangers exchanged nods and followed. The puppy moved with surprise and determination, its thin body weaving between brambles and roots, tail low, ears alert. It didn't stop to sniff or wander. It was following something, a memory, a scent, a bond that hadn't faded with time. The Rangers moved quickly behind it, calling out occasionally but never needing to guide it. The puppy knew where it was going. Nearly a mile into the dense forest, the terrain changed. The trees opened into a rocky slope, and there, just ahead, was the edge of a steep ravine. The puppy halted, paws inches from the drop. Then it began barking, loud, frantic, desperate. Its small body trembled as it yelped toward the depths below, as it tried to awaken something hidden in the undergrowth. The Rangers rushed to the edge, peering down. At first, there was only brush and broken branches. But then one of them shouted, a flash of color, fabric, and something more. A collapsed tent, a trail of disturbed leaves. The puppy barked even louder, dancing in circles behind them. Something, or someone, was down there. Climbing carefully down the steep ravine, the Rangers moved branch by branch, heartbeats pounding with hope and dread. At the bottom, tangled in thick underbrush and half hidden by fallen branches, they spotted the wreckage of a collapsed camping tent. The canvas was torn, soaked with rain and dirt, and half buried under debris from the recent storms. But beneath it all, something else caught their eye. A baby carrier tipped on its side. Dried blood stained one strap, sending a jolt of fear through them. Reyes dropped to his knees, clearing debris with shaking hands. And then a soft, almost inaudible sound, A tiny hiccup. He pulled aside the last branch and gasped. There, nestled beside the carrier, sat a toddler, dazed, silent, and caked in mud and scratches. His wide eyes stared blankly ahead, too tired to cry, too weak to move. But he was breathing. "It's him," Reyes choked out. "It's Eli." One of the rangers radioed for medics as another gently scooped the child into a blanket. Despite everything, Eli had survived, alone in the wilderness, exposed to the elements, with only the memory of warmth of his puppy's scent to comfort him. Back at the ridge above, the puppy barked once more, then sat down at the edge, tail curled around its tiny feet. It hadn't abandoned the crib to run. It had stayed behind to draw help, to lead someone back to the child it couldn't reach. It hadn't failed. It had saved him. Eli was airlifted to the nearest hospital, barely responsive but alive. Doctors work around the clock, treating dehydration, minor injuries, and signs of prolonged exposure. Miraculously, there was no permanent damage. The toddler had endured 2 weeks alone in the wilderness, something that should have been impossible, but he hadn't truly been alone. As Eli's condition stabilized, the media caught wind of the incredible story. News outlets everywhere reported on the puppy who had refused to abandon an empty crib, staying put until someone noticed. Photos of the frail little dog, standing guard beside the cradle, stir hearts across the country. They called him many things: hero, miracle, symbol of loyalty. But to Eli, he was simply comfort, warmth, and safety. The boy's parents had tragically perished in the ravine during the storm, their remains found near the wrecked tent. But Eli had survived, watched over by the smallest, most devoted guardian. Months passed. Eli, now in the care of a loving adoptive family, began to laugh again, to play, to thrive. And always by his side was the puppy, no longer starving, no longer dirty, but healthy and proud. They named him Guardian, a title he'd already earned 100 times over. Every night, as Eli sleeps peacefully in his crib, Guardian curls up at its foot, eyes half closed, ears always listening. He is no longer guarding an empty crib filled with silence and fear. Now he guards a child, a life he never stopped believing was worth saving.